Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode in 5, where we interview partners from all over the world about happiness at work. And today, I have the honors of having Shona here with me. Hello, Shona.
Hi, Oren. How are you doing?
I'm great. Thank you for being here. And I will start asking you to introduce yourself.
Great. So my name is Sheona McGraw, and I run a business called Cloud 9 to 5. But leading up to that, for me, it's always been really important for me in my career to work on projects that I feel passionately about and that have a strong focus on giving back to the world. So most of my career has been working in the nonprofit and charity sector, and I've done a lot of work with the Canadian government as well. Um, but so interestingly, working alongside people who were just as passionate and purpose driven as me, I quickly discovered that having purpose alone wasn't enough to be happy. A lot of my colleagues and managers and staff, they were burning out, and the organizations that I was working with, I found they really weren't meeting their potential. And so that was what led me to the wonderful world of happiness at work. I spent years training in happiness at work and researching what makes people and organizations thrive. I got certified by the Canadian Mental Health Association as a psychological health and safety advisor. And after all that, I launched my business Cloud 9 to 5. And we work with teams to help them tap into their potential and thrive. And then in 2020, I was fortunate enough to become one of six co-owners and managing directors of Woohoo Unlimited, which is an organization that's been training and inspiring happier workplaces since 2003.
Woohoo! That's wonderful. So, Shona, what makes you thrive at your work?
Yeah, well, so what makes me thrive, what makes me happy is successfully completing a project. Because by nature, I'm a really curious person. I get really excited about I'll be listening to a podcast, or I'll be walking down the street and I see something. A piece of art or whatever, I get really excited about a lot of different things. And in my personal life, I'm always trying and learning new things: how to play the harmonica, how to speak in Mandarin Chinese, even how to make those animals out of balloons. So
Wow.
yeah, whatever I see, I get really interested. And I'm usually just learning these things just for the sake of learning, um, not really with a concrete goal or something that I'm working towards. So it's not like I'm saying, okay, I'm gonna learn 5 songs on the harmonica and that's it. It's just, hey, I wonder if I can play the harmonica, and then I give it a try. So for my work, I try to really make sure that I have clearly defined goals so that I can feel a real sense of progress, of moving forward, and that sense of completion. And I have to say, it feels really good to
Yeah.
end up with something tangible and concrete that I know that I've finished. Because, like I said, in my personal life, I just do a lot of things to just try it, but I don't necessarily end up with anything at the end other than the experience. So I do like having the feeling of knowing that I started and brought something all the way to completion. So
Wow,
yeah.
that's awesome. Especially the one with the balloons.
Well, maybe our next interview, I'll do a little session showing you some of the balloon animals.
That would be wonderful. Shauna, so happiness at work, or you call it mental health. Maybe you can explain about the definition of the between them. But why do you think it's important to invest in mental health or in happiness at work generally, and even especially nowadays during the world pandemic?
Yeah. So I think a lot of companies are looking to create a happier workplace. They tend to focus on things that make the workplace more fun. And look, there's no problem. There's nothing wrong with making a workplace fun. Who doesn't want to work in a fun place? But putting in foosball tables and giving free snacks and that kind of thing, that doesn't go very far for creating a happier workplace. And sometimes it's really hard to get this message across to companies. And here in Canada, I don't talk too much about happiness at work. I talk more about mental health, but it's the same thing. I mean, when we talk about mental health, people tend to think of mental health issues. They think of the negative side of mental health, depression, stress, anxiety. That's one side of it, but mental health is just, it's the health of your mind. So there's a negative side of it, the negative effects, and there's positive, when you're thriving, when you're feeling grateful, when you're feeling joy. All of those things contribute to being happy and to meeting your potential. So when I talk about happiness at work, I'm always thinking about it from a mental health perspective, that how do we not just make sure that people are not suffering from mental health issues and that they get the support that they need, but how do we push them beyond just being okay to actually thriving?
That's
Um,
wonderful.
yeah,
Because
and
I think
so
the word happiness has a sense of fluffiness, and I think putting it a mental aspect is something that is very, very right.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, um, we know with the when people are suffering from a mental health issue, from depression or anxiety, that, I mean, there's so much research out there showing that the productivity is often affected, performance, making more mistakes, just being disengaged. And there is a growing body of research showing the opposite, that when you're feeling fulfilled, when you have purpose, when you're feeling joyful, grateful, all the positive sides of mental health, that there's huge benefits to all those same things, to innovation, creativity, productivity. So yeah, it's really, I think it's a great way to connect with the pandemic, what's happening, because we're seeing a lot of mental health issues. So I think it's more important now than ever to make sure that we really put happiness at work, or positive mental health, in the minds of everybody at the forefront. So
Well, you
um,
got me convinced, that for sure.
yeah,
So where can I start if I want to implement positive mental health in my organization? What would be the first moves you would recommend me on doing?
yeah. Well, that's a good question, because I think a lot of people, a lot of managers, a lot of organizations would love to get started, but it can be pretty overwhelming, just to know where to start. It's such a big thing, especially if you've got a larger organization, or if there are a lot of issues that your team has to work through. So I think taking an approach, just like a lot of things, when you're starting something for the first time, it's usually a good idea to start simple, to start with something small. Don't try
Such
and do
as,
everything. Sorry?
give me an example of something
Yeah.
small that
So,
I can start doing tomorrow.
yeah. So, connecting with your coworkers and with your employees, I think, is always a good place to start. Um, Especially if you're looking to get a sense of how things are going with the team, and really to know where you should be focusing your energy. So asking them, how's it going? How are you doing? What could I do as your manager, to give you, to help make your experience as an employee as good as possible? Um, so that, asking those kinds of questions, just getting to know your team, getting to know what works really well for them, and what is making their job harder, and what is it that you could do to help improve their experience. That also builds trust. That also helps to build an authentic relationship. Those things don't happen overnight, but trust is so critical, especially during a pandemic. And and now that we're all most of us are working online, that relationship is that much more important to build.
That's wonderful. Sheona, if you can share with us some of a success story or some more tips that we can use to implement happiness at work, what would those tips be?
Yeah, well, so some tips on uh, how to implement happiness at work. So I think back to, there's an organization that I volunteer with. It's a nonprofit organization. They're based in Toronto, and So they've been dealing, just like all of us, they've been dealing with the pandemic. Everything shut down in March in 2020. And they have a lot of frontline workers. So they're not just dealing with the the stress that everyone's got with COVID, but they're putting themselves at risk every day that they go into work, and they have to go into work, I guess, to some extent. And so that's a pretty stressful environment for them to be in. But thankfully, the organization that they're working for has made happiness at work a priority for years. So in a lot of similar organizations in this industry, a lot of people were panicking, but people in this organization, the staff, they're not worried about job security more than usual, because they've built up this great relationship with the managers, the leadership team, and the leadership team has always communicated to them in an open and honest way. So they're always very upfront with what's happening. There's a real sense of trust that if there's any news, we as employees will be told, and will be part of the decision process. And in fact, the leadership team, they went above and beyond to give employees peace of mind and a sense of security. They said to them, uh, they made sure that the employees knew that they had a choice, that if they didn't feel safe to come into work, they didn't have to. Their jobs would be secure. They weren't going to lose their jobs if they chose that they didn't feel comfortable as frontline workers to come in. And that's a really hard decision to make as an organization, because it means you're not necessarily going to be, you know, operating optimally as well as you can. But they were thinking long term. They know that the pandemic's not going to be here forever, and they found ways to make do with fewer staff. And a lot of the staff decided that they would go back because they trusted the leadership team so much. And the other thing that helped to bring people back, even though they had the choice, was that the emphasis that was placed on personal safety. The leadership team again made certain choices to protect their staff, their physical safety. And yes, it inconvenienced some of the clients, maybe, and it was maybe a bit inconvenient for the managers. But at the end of the day, the employees felt safe. They felt that they could totally trust their leadership team, that the leadership team cared about them, and the clients saw what we were doing um, for the staff. And so the clients said, hey, this organization, they really care about their
The ripple
team.
effect, yeah.
And so yes, the clients were inconvenienced a little bit, but the positive effects were far bigger, where the clients are saying, wow, I wish I worked for an organization that cared about me like this. And so it's, if anything, it's actually really boosted the reputation of this organization with its clients, with its employees. It already had a good reputation, but this has just helped to strengthen the message that we need to treat people like people, and employees are at the heart of every organization. So
That's a great
we
example.
it's not a resource that we can take for granted.
Sheona, thank you for the example and thank you for your great tips. I'm sure we could talk for hours more, but our time is up. So thank you again for being here. And
Thank you for letting me share my 5 minutes of insight with you.
take care and hope to meet soon again.
Take care.